Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We are holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Hey. We're on Samach Beis Amid Beis. We're in the middle of Hilchos Pesach. We're holding in Siman Taf Samach Aleph. With Hashem, we're going to finish Siman Taf Samach Aleph today. We're in the midst of Sif Hey, and we're on the top line in the Ramah on Samach Beis Amid Beis. Yesterday we spoke about matzos. Yesterday we spoke about nefuchos. We spoke about matzos that were puffed up, and now the Ramah continues on the top of Samach Beis Amid Beis, right by the Ois Lamed Vav for the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Ramah, Im shtei matzos sheichvos zu al zu batanur kaidem afiyasam. If two matzos are laying on top of each other inside the oven before they were baked. So you put the matzahs into the oven, and incidentally, you laid one matzah on top of another matzah. So you have two raw matzahs laying on top of each other inside the oven. Asurim, these matzahs are prohibited. These matzahs are aser. The heavy kematzah kefula, because essentially these have the same problem as a kefula. What's the problem with the kefula? When you have a folded matzah, so we're afraid that where the matzah is folded, the heat did not get inside and did not bake it. Over here, we have two pieces of dough laying on top of each other. Essentially, we have the same problem. You have a situation where the heat cannot penetrate from one matzah to the other because it's laying on top of each other. The heat cannot get inside. So you have essentially the same problem. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Ois Katan Lamed Vav, if you have two matzahs, so they're laying on top of each other. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Hainu afilu rak miktsas matzazu hayamunach bataner al miktsas matzazu. It doesn't have to be that one matzah is completely laying on top of the other matzah. It even could be that part of one matzah is laying on top of the other matzah. That area becomes a problem. V'atam, and the rationale for this is Lefisha Mekayim Hadibuk, at the place where two matzahs are attached to each other, Eina Eish Shailit Sham. The heat of the fire doesn't permeate over there. It doesn't get to the matzah. Valkein Dinoi Kamatzah Sheniskaplo b'miktzas. So the halacha of this matzah is the same as a matzah that's folded. The Nesra Kol Matzah Elyona Umatzah Chetachtoina. And each matzah is completely aser. Now, over here, when the Chavetz Chaim says that these matzahs are completely aser, the entire matzah, not only the place where one matzah was laying on top of the other, we're talking about when you're baking on Pesach. You're baking on Pesach, so now chametz is aser b'mashu, and like the Chavetz Chaim said earlier, since the matzah is one piece, if on one part of the matzah we have a chash chimutz, we answer the entire matzah. But if this happened before Pesach, let's say like us, for the most part, we bake our matzahs way before Yom Tov. So if this happens when you're baking your matzahs 2 months before Pesach, Meser Mekayim Hadibuk, you could break off the part of the matzah where one matzah was laying on top of the other. You break off from those two matzahs that piece, the area where the two matzahs are connected, the Makam Hadibuk, together with a kedei netila. Remember what we said. We said it's the thickness of the distal joint of the thumb. You take off kedei netila, which is roichav agudel, the width of the joint of the thumb. You would have to break off a piece of the top matzah and a piece of the bottom matzah to take away that piece. But since it's before Pesach, we're not machmer to the extent that we're going to answer the entire matzah. Ois Katan Lamed Zayin. The Ramah said that over here we're talking about a case where they went into the oven and one matzah was laying on top of the other, and kaidem afiyasam, before they were baked. What the Ramah wants to say here is, you put the matzahs in the oven in this fashion so that one is laying on top of the other. So they went into the oven raw in that state, and now you leave them over there until they're baked. But what if the baker put the matzahs into the oven and he immediately realized that one matzah is laying on top of the other? So he immediately separated them. Then says the Chavetz Chaim, Nira lahatir. Then the Chavetz Chaim says it would seem to him that in that case you could be matir both of these matzahs. Now we go back to the Ramah. The Ramah continues, and the Ramah says, "V'chein yesh li zaher." Similarly, we should take care shelo yigu zeh bazeh b'tanor ba'oidan lachin, that the matzah should not touch one another. Forget that one matzah shouldn't lay on top of the other. They shouldn't even touch each other inside the oven while they're still raw and moist. Because the heat of the flame, the ur is the flame, the heat of the flame is not going to get in between. It's not going to get into that area where the two matzahs touch each other, and it's possible that the dough will become chametz. Says the Chavetz Chaim in Ois Lam Ches, Shelo Yigu Zeh Bazeh, you should take care that the matzahs should not touch one another. However, says the Chavetz Chaim, Ubidiyeved, in the case of Bidiyeved, Im Nagu V'Noshchu Zeh Bazeh, if they did touch each other. Now, over here, the Chavetz Chaim uses the word Noshchu. He doesn't only say Nagu, that they touched one another. He says Im Nagu V'Noshchu Zeh Bazeh. If they touched one each other, and literally noshchu means they bit one another, which we explained previously. What that means is that they're connected to each other to the extent that if you would try to pull them apart, one matzah would pull dough away from the other matzah. So they really got connected when they touched one another. In that case, Kevon, but still the Chavetz Chaim says, B'di'eved, even if they touched each other to that extent, since each matzah is laying on the floor of the oven, the heat of the fire is going to get into the matzah very, very well from the underside of the matzah. And the matzah will bake properly, and such a matzah, says the Chavetz Chaim, is mutter. In the previous case, where we're talking about one matzah laying on top of the other matzah, that's not the case. Over there, the bottom matzah is exposed to the floor of the oven, but the top matzah is not. Over here, where they're touching one another, both matzahs are touching the floor of the matzah, the floor of the oven in their entirety. They're also both exposed to the heat of the air inside the oven on top. The only place that isn't is that little tiny spot between the two where it's touching. But if you think about it, the middle of each matzah is also not exposed on all sides to the air of the oven. So over here, it's almost like, okay, so it's one big matzah, and everything is laying on the floor of the oven, and everything is exposed on the top. And now what? And now you're going to separate it. And what if you have one matzah and you break it in half later? So why does that little side piece of our thin little matzah have to be exposed? So the Chavetz Chaim says over here that certainly b'di'eved, this is okay. I see I made a note for myself here about footnote 80. There's your footnote number 80. Let me remind myself here. He makes the point over here in Dirshu footnote number 80. The Chavetz Chaim, the Ramah is saying over here that we should be careful that the matzahs should not touch one another. Okay, so says the Dirshu footnote here, V'davka kishehein munachos betanor. When do we have this concern that the matzahs should not touch each other? That's when they're laying in the oven. Sheyesh lachos shemiyidbaku zu bezu. We don't want the matzahs to touch one another because they may become attached. But how about when you're in the process of putting the matzah into the oven? Is it okay if for a brief moment one matzah touches another? Kasav HaChazon Ish, the Chazon Ish writes, Shein lachos b'matzahs shebetanor derech hilucha ay kishemorid ay salatanor. You don't have to worry that as you're putting the matzah into the oven, one matzah might touch another matzah for a brief moment. And he makes a very, very interesting point for those of us that have been to the matzah bakery and are somewhat familiar with the matzah baking process. He makes a very interesting point. Says the Chazon Ish, if you're going to worry about that, if so, yesh lachush kol hamatzah shalanu shehem kefulos. Then all of our matzahs essentially have a din of being a kafel. Remember, what we said is that the potential problem of one matzah laying on top of another is that essentially it's the same as a kfula. In a matzah kfula, you have one matzah that's folded. and we're worried about the heat getting inside the fold. When one matzah is laying on another, it's essentially the same problem. Now, if you're going to worry that maybe in the process of putting one matzah into the oven, one matzah might briefly touch another matzah before it passes it by and lays in the oven, if you're going to say that that's a problem, then all of our matzahs are a problem. Why? Because it writes the Chazon Ish, Shaharei machnisim oisam letaner imakol. How do we put our matzahs in the oven? The way we put our matzahs in the oven is we take a raw matzah, which is soft. Here's your matzah. We have it draped over a stick. It's folded over a stick like this. And the shiber, the baker, goes into the oven, lays it down like this, and rolls the stick and rolls out the matzah. Well, in that process, when he does this and puts it on the floor of the oven, guess what? The top half of the matzah is laying on the bottom half of the matzah for a brief moment until he does that. So are you going to tell us that every single one of our matzahs has the din of a kfula? Because for that brief moment in time, as he's laying it out in the oven, it touched the other half of itself. So now it has a din of a kafel. He says the Chazon Ish, the way we put the matzah to the oven is with a pole. And all the time, one half of the matzah lays on the other half of the matzah until you roll it with the pole to unfold it and lay it on the floor of the oven. And the Chazon Ish explains that the reason this is not problematic is the reason it's not a problem is because the top half of the matzah never becomes attached to the bottom half of the matzah. It lays over there for a brief moment and then it gets unfolded. And even if they would become slightly attached, he's immediately opening it up. He says our ovens are so hot that kemat immediately after you put the dough into the oven, it at least reaches the temperature of yad seledisbay, where your hand would jump back. And if so, that little fold isn't going to cool it down. The whole problem of a kefil is only before it went into the oven it became a kefil. And therefore the heat of the oven never got a chance to bake it quick enough that it shouldn't become chametz. Okay. Now I wanted to point out over here, if you take a look at the Biur Halacha, before we leave this Siman, let's take a look at the Biur Halacha, Dibra Maschil, Zu al Zu Batanur. I feel that this Biur Halacha gives us also a little bit more insight into this issue of a kefil and how we should look at the matzahs that we call kfulais, and we should realize that really this is a chumrah. Kasav b'Sefer Chemed Moshe v'zel l'shoina. The Chavetz Chaim quotes from the Sefer Chemed Moshe. In this din of one matzah laying on another, the chen bedin kefula, and also in the entire din of a matzah kefula, hayonire it would seem the chol shedevukim yachad b'neshicha, whenever two matzahs are touching each other b'neshicha, that they're firmly attached, so that if you would try to pull it apart, it would pull dough from the other side. Ein iser b'zeh. There should be no isser at all. Essentially, if you have a fold in a matzah, right? Let's say this over here is our matzah dough, and you have a fold. If that fold is compressed, if it's rolled down to the extent that if now you would try to pull it apart, it's been a shicha. When you pull it apart, it's going to pull dough from the other side of the fold. Essentially, it's one piece, so it's like a slightly thick matzah. It's not a matzah that has a fold that we're worried the heat isn't going to get in. Why does the heat have to get in? Essentially, it's one matzah. That's all it is. You compressed it into one matzah. The whole problem really only is if one is laying on the other, or it's slightly attached. If you try to pull it apart, it will separate without pulling dough from the other side, because then it's two pieces, one laying on the other. Then we have a worry that the heat's not penetrating inside, and we want it to penetrate inside because it's two separate pieces. So he's saying, if it's mamish compressed so that it became one piece, so it's one piece. Why are we worrying that the heat's not getting in over there? It's only when it's not really one piece. So then this piece is not getting fully baked and this piece is not getting fully baked. Or if it's folded, the inside of the fold is not getting well baked. If it's mamish compressed, that means that the dough was soft, it was moist. And it's mamish made into one piece as if it was kneaded together. So the Kevin Moshe says he doesn't even hear this whole potential problem of a kfula or one laying on top of the other if it's compressed to that degree. However, he says, my heart is not full enough. Kind of like we say somebody's full of himself. The Kevin Moshe said, I'm not so full of myself. That I should go ahead and be decisive and make a declaration that there's a heter here. Because the Paiskim don't say such a heter. So, but you do see from this Chemed Moshe that these are really chumrus. Now, fine, it's chumra de piskad. We should not say we should. I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't take care. We should take care. But at the same time, we have to keep a proper perspective. And we have to realize that this is really a chumrah. It's a big chumrah. We take out kfulas in the matzah bakery, where we're looking at the matzah in the light, and you see a line on one side of the matzah and a line on the other side of the matzah that shows you that the matzah was folded, right? Because whenever you have a fold in a matzah, so now you'll, even if it's rolled down, in other words, let's say the lady was rolling the matzah, and while she was rolling the matzah got folded. And now she takes the rolling pin and she rolls it out very well. But you'll see a line here. In the finished matzah, you'll see a line. And then when you flip the matzah over, you'll see a corresponding line a little bit over the other side of the fold. So what we do is we look at a matzah, and if we see a line in the matzah, we flip it over. Do we see a line on the other side? If we see a line on both sides, that means there was a fold. Now, that matzah is mamish compressed. It's mamish flat. And it's dark on both sides. We also, another kula that we use to be mitzaref is if it's very well baked and it's mamish flat. And also if it's radled through, if there are holes going through the matzah in that area, so then the heat's going to penetrate. So sometimes we'll let it go through, but sometimes we'll take that kfula out because we say it's a kfula. But you realize what a chumrah that is? I mean, the Chevin Moshe is telling us over here that if it's compressed to the point where if you would pull it apart, it would pull the. This is so compressed, and yet we are machmer. That's chumrah de pischa. Okay, I think we have time. We'll go a little bit weiter. Let's start Siman Tov Samach Beis. Maybe I'll have to change the title of the shir on the name of the file on YouTube so people realize we go to the next Siman. But let's go to Samach Gimel Amid Aleph and let's start Siman Tov Samach Beis. Siman Tov Samach Beis din mei peiros ima machmitzin. Mei peiros, if you use liquid to make your dough other than water. Now, mei peiros literally means fruit juices, but we're going to see we're not only talking about fruit juices, we're also talking, let's say, about oil, shemen. We're calling oil also a fruit juice. But as liquids other than water, says the Mechaber here in Sif Aleph, mei peiros b'loi mayim. If you make a dough using mei peiros, without any water. Now, just to realize, when we say without any water, certainly mei peiros has a certain amount of natural water content, right? Orange juice, you take an orange and you squeeze juice out of the orange, chemically, a lot of that orange juice is water, but it's not added water. It's 100% juice without any added water. That's what the Mechaber means here. Mei peiros b'loi mayim. If you have fruit juice, without any added water, ein machmitzin klal. The opinion of the Mechaber, Fruit juice does not have the capacity to cause chimutz. Fruit juice, no chametz. Therefore, it says the Mechaber, you needed a dough with fruit juice. Umuter lechol bepesach matzah shenilusha b'mei peros. On Pesach, you're allowed to eat a dough that was kneaded with mei peros. Afilu shasa kol hayom. Even if that dough sat without being worked the whole day. So you needed a dough with apple juice, and now you put the dough on the side and you leave it there for 4 hours, and you don't roll it, you don't anything. It sat there for 4 hours. And now you come 4 hours later and you bake it, says the Mechaber, no problem. Because the apple juice, if it's 100% apple juice, the apple juice cannot cause chimutz. Avol, however, says the Mechaber, ein yoitza ba yedei chayvasai. But you cannot use this matzah. If you made a matzah in this fashion, you cannot use that matzah to be mekayim your chiyuv of eating matzah shal mitzvah on the Seder night. You can't be yoitza in the mitzvah of achilas matzah with this matzah, mipnei shehi matzah ashira, because this is what we call matzah ashira, rich matzah. Ukroksiv lechamayni. We know that to be yoitza in the mitzvah of achilas matzah, you need lechamayni. You need poor bread. This is not poor bread. This is rich bread. This is fancy. It was made with mei peros. It's not just water and flour. It's flour and apple juice, which is more tasteful and fancier. So that's not lechem ayni, that's lechem ashir. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif cotton ice cotton aleph. Mei peros. What does the Mechaber mean here by mei peros? Going, for example, yain, wine, the shemen or oil, v'hu hadin davash. Same would be honey. When we say mei peros, we're referring to something like honey as well. The chalav or milk, usha'ar kol hamashkin, or other liquids other than water. The yizbar l'kamon. Later on in Siv Daled, we'll explain the different mashkin in greater detail. Ice cotton bays. The Mechaber is talking about a case where you needed the dough with mei peros b'loy mayim, without water. Hainu b'loy mayim klal. When the Mechaber says no water, he means no water whatsoever. If there is water, even a kol shehu, even a drop of water, then it does have the capacity to become chametz because there is water. Not only that, but we're going to see it might actually become chametz faster if you're mixing water and mei peros. And that means even a tiny bit of water together with the mei peros. Ice cotton gimel. The Mechaber's lashon was that the mei peros cannot cause chimutz klal. Ein machmitzin klal. It does not cause chimutz at all. Says the Mishnah Berurah klal. Afilu hein mi peros chamutzin. Even if we're talking about strong, sharp, pungent fruit juices, ein machmitzin es isa. It still cannot cause chimutz in a dough. I believe he means juices, let's say like pomegranate juice, that's very, very pungent or has a sourness to it. Apple juice also has a tartness, a sourness to it. That is still, in all, that does not have the capacity to cause chimutz. Excuse me. Okay. Ice cotton daled. The Mechaber said if you need the dough with mei peros, even if you let it sit all day, kol hayom, still no chimutz. Still you're allowed to eat it on Pesach. Says the Mishnah Berurah, how about you left it all day, the nitbach habotzek, and it rose. You look at it and it blew up. So it mamish looks like a dough that rose. Nope, that's not chimutz according to the Mechaber. The ein zeh chimutz elasirchaim. This is not chimutz. It's not true fermentation. It's what we call sirchaim. It's some kind of decomposition. It's a deterioration or a spoilage. That's what it is. It's not chimutz. Ice cotton hay. You're allowed to eat this dough on Pesach, but you can't be yoitze your chiyuv of achilas matzah. Yedei chayvasa. You cannot fulfill your obligation. Hainu kazayis rishain shel shtei alelos. By this, the Mechaber means that you cannot use this for that kazayis of matzah that you eat to be mekayim the mitzvah of achilas matzah. All right, it's only 24 minutes. Let's go a little bit weiter. Sif beis in the Mechaber. Mei peros im mayim. Here in Sif Aleph, we were talking about straight mei peros, 100% liquids other than water, not even a drop of water added in. But how about if you kneaded your dough with apple juice and water? Mei Perois im mayim, if you mix Mei Perois together with water, guess what? Mimaharim lahachmitz, that could become chametz even faster. Yosim mishar isa, faster than a dough that you only needed with water. So a dough that you need with water, we said you have sheer mil. You have 18 minutes for it to become chametz. A dough that you needed with Mei Perois, over there in the Mechaber said Mei Perois, 100% Mei Perois, doesn't cause chametz at all. You mix Mei Perois together with water, that can accelerate the chametz process, and now the dough might become chametz even less than 18 minutes. Hilkach, therefore, ein lolush bahem. You should not knead a dough with Mei Perois and water. V'im losh bahem, and if you did knead such a dough with Mei Perois and water, yoifem miyad, you should bake it immediately, because it might become chametz immediately if you don't bake it right away. So knead it and bake it. Don't let it sit at all. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ais Cotton Vav. Im mayim, if you mix Perois together with water, bein shahamei Perois merubin, whether the Mei Perois is the majority of the liquid, v'hamayim muatin, and the water is only a minority part of the liquid, ubein lahepech. It doesn't matter if the Mei Perois is the roiv or the water is the roiv. So even if you have a lot of apple juice and you have a minute amount of water, still might accelerate the chametz process, and you might not even have 18 minutes. Or if you have roiv mayim and a drop of Mei Perois, you might say, oh, come on, I have roiv mayim, I should have 18 minutes. Nope. Since you have a little bit of Mei Perois, it could accelerate the chametz process, and you might not have 18 minutes. The Kosvo Achrayim, and the Achrayim write, the ein chiluk, there's no difference, bein shenilo shtchila im Mei Perois, whether you needed the dough first with the Mei Perois, and then water came in before you baked it, or you needed it with water and then the fruit juice came in. Doesn't matter. Either way, it might become chametz very, very quickly. How about if you poured apple juice into a dough and you needed the dough, and now you let it sit for a while? We said if it's only apple juice, you could let it sit. It's not going to become chametz. So it's sat for an hour. Now you come back and it's dry. You don't see any apple juice there anymore. You don't feel any apple juice there. Now you add water. So maybe now it's considered that now I'm kneading a dough with water without any Mei Perois, because the Mei Perois is all dried up. It's absorbed already. It's gone. Says the Chavetz Chaim, if the Mei Perois dried out already in the mix with the flour, and now you add it in water, Ayin bebir halacha, he tells you, look at in the bir halacha, dibur hamaskil ein lolush behem. And in this bir halacha, dibur hamaskil ein lolush behem, he brings down a machlokes over here about the status of the Mei Perois after it dries up. And about 5 lines before the end of that bir halacha, he says, Nired de b'shas atchak yesh lismach lahakel, in a shas atchak, if you put in Mei Perois, and now the Mei Perois dried up, yesh lismach lahakel, you could be mekel v'lolosh me'achar she'ikar dena machaber ena l'kulei alma, and now you could go ahead and mix in your water and knead it. And he says, because this whole question, this whole din, that if you mix it, it might become a chametz faster, is a question amongst the Rishonim. Because the sheet of the Rif and the Rambam, they disagree with what the Mechaber says here. And they say that Mei Perois together with water does not become a chametz any faster. So if you have a shasat chak situation, and you put in the Mei Perois, and now the Mei Perois is already dried up, so in a shasat chak, if this is the only flour you have to make your matzah, and you need more liquid, so now you could put in your water and we don't have to worry. Okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut in Zion. Memaharim lahachmitz. When you mix water in Mei Perois, it might accelerate the chametz process, and it might become chametz even faster. It's Seiner Loimar. When the Ramah said, when the Mechaber says memaharim lahachmitz, that it will become chametz faster, he wants to say afilu b'pachas misher mil, that even less than 18 minutes alolu his chametz. it is possible for it to become chametz. Hilkach, therefore you should bake it right away. The chayshin on shemiyashe koydem afia, because we're afraid you're going to let it sit, and if you let it sit, it might become chametz very fast. So bake it immediately. The Chabad said you should bake it right away. Let's say you mixed up such a dough with apple juice and water, and you did not bake it immediately. You let the dough sit. Says the Chavetz Chaim, yesh lesar ba'achila av shelo isha shir mil. You should aser this dough ba'achila. This would be prohibited to eat on Pesach, even if you let it sit for less than 18 minutes. Ube'eli araba mitzaded lahater behefsid meruba af ba'achila kol shelo isha shir mil. The Eli Rabba says that if it's a case of significant financial loss, then it's mutter even ba'achila if it's less than 18 minutes. And you don't see any signs of chimutz. You don't see cracking. You don't see that it rose. Venera, the Chavetz Chaim says it would seem that if this happened b'shoigeg inadvertently, then certainly you could rule leniently in pressing situations. The Chanal b'simin taf nun hesiv gimel linian lisha b'foishrin ayin sham. We said such a kula also if somebody was over and he needed his matzah dough with warm water, which we said you're not supposed to do, but if it was done b'shegeg as a shasat chak, you could be lenient. Vedan, you should know the hiskimu achrayim that the achrayim agree. The consensus of the achrayim is the after kaimelon the imafa miyad mutter lechaloisay matzah. Even though the mechaber is telling you here that if you needed the dough with water and made peros, it's mutter ba'achila if you bake it immediately. Nevertheless, but certainly you can't fulfill your obligation, your mitzvah daraisa of achilas matzah with this matzah. The kol sheyesh by mei peros afilu mu'id, because any dough that has mei peros, even if only a minute amount of mei peros, kol shenirgosh by tama mei peros, as long as you could sense the taste of the mei peros, the mikri matzah ashira. That's matzah ashira. Then yosef by the cheva. Furthermore, even if you needed a matzah dough with water, and then you just basted it with apple juice or with oil, and you stuck it in the oven, you can't use that to be yotzi your chiv of achilas matzah either. Once you baste it even with mei peros, it's no longer called lechamayni. Now it is a din of matzah ashira, and you cannot be yotzi your chiv of achilas matzah. Thank you so much for joining me for this limud haTorah. The schus of limud haTorah should stand Gans Klal Yisrael in good stead. Everybody in need of a refuah should have one. The Rebbeinu Shalom should be megan Gans Klal Yisrael. Nobody should get sick. Chas v'chalila. Anybody who needs a refuah should have a refuah. We should all be zoichet not only to see each other once again in person and have the share in person and be zoichet to daven with a minyan and have an ameni heshpei rabbah and a kedusha and a kriyas haTorah and everything else. We should be zoichet to meet each other in Yerushalayim by the Beis Hamikdash with the Geula Shlema. Be well. Have a wonderful Shabbos.